While it's undeniable that there are a lot of people every single year who want to learn a foreign language, a lot of people are intimidated by how difficult it seemingly is. It's common knowledge among English speakers that Chinese, Japanese, and Korean are all some of the hardest languages for us to learn. There's an infographic put out by the United States Foreign Service Institute that ranks different languages in terms of their difficulty, and Chinese, Japanese, and Korean are all listed among the most difficult. But what makes these so hard to learn? And are they even as hard as people say to pick up? Let's start with Chinese. When people talk about the Chinese language, they typically are talking about either Mandarin or Cantonese, both of which are spoken variants of the language, whereas Chinese itself refers to the writing system. There are a few things that make Chinese really intimidating for English speakers. For starters, the vocabulary is wildly different, and it's also a very difficult language to read. That said, when it comes to speaking, it might not be as difficult as people may think. The grammar of Mandarin Chinese is very simple at its roots, and it's something that's relatively easy to pick up. What makes Chinese so difficult is its reading and writing system. Chinese doesn't have an alphabet like you might expect. Rather, every single word is written with individual characters. These characters are especially hard to memorize when taught in a fashion that you might teach a Romance language like English, French, or Spanish. Chinese isn't a language where you can just look at the character, know how to pronounce it, and memorize it and move on. Rather, you have to learn each one individually, and so having specific devices in place like mnemonics, or being able to imagine the character as a picture of what it represents, those are all really effective ways of memorizing the language. It's also useful to note that every Chinese character is different, but they tend to follow general rules of shapes and structures with different radicals branching off of it, so it's not quite as intimidating as it may seem. That said, pronunciation is another matter. Mandarin is notorious for being a tonal language. That means the pitch of your voice will shift the meaning of a word, even if it otherwise would sound the same. Examples like
ma, 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 ma.
All have different meanings. Now, learning these tones isn't impossible, but it may lead to some confusions in pronunciation or comprehension early on. Your best course of action if you choose to learn Chinese is to focus on an audio program before a textbook or traditional classroom or anything like that. By doing it this way, you'll be able to learn the different pitches and sounds in the language without being influenced by how you perceive the language being written. When written and taken at face value, Mandarin is an incredibly challenging language for English speakers. But if you separate out the reading and the writing of the language, the entire thing becomes much more simple and much more attainable, potentially becoming easier than some of the other languages ranked lower on the infographic I showed earlier. In summary, while Mandarin may be an incredibly intimidating language to learn, it's not as intimidating as you may have thought. There's patterns, the grammar isn't too terrible, and in general, if you want to learn Mandarin Chinese, then give it a shot. Who knows, it may be easier than you think. Thank you guys so much for watching, and if you want to see more content like this, make sure to hit like and subscribe. If you want to see a video detailing the rise of Korean content and why Korea is becoming so popular in modern media, click the video on the left. Otherwise, if you want to see something that YouTube handpicked just for you, click the video on the right. Thank you guys so much, and until next time.